citizens in developed countries are used to having a seemingly endless supply of water for drinking, washing and cooking. But for vast swathes of the world's population, hundreds of millions of them in Africa, fetching, carrying and treating water is a fundamental and often grinding aspect of daily life, something my guest today is working hard to change. Christelle Kwizera is the founder and managing director of Water Access Rwanda, and we can cross now to her. Thank you so much for joining us today from Kigali. Now, we are often told not to waste water, but could you please start by giving us an idea of how the average water consumption changes per person, per country?
Yeah, thank you, Haxi. Thank you for having me to discuss this very important topic to me. The water consumption patterns across the world are very different. You have a 94 liters per person per day average in Asia, and then you have 250 liters in Europe, and in the US it jumps over 300, but when you come to Africa it's below 40 liters per person per day. And according to WHO, a person needs between 50 to 100 liters of safe water on a daily basis. So Africa is still the continent where individuals don't consume or have access to enough water for their daily basic needs. So when the discussion about saving water or valuing water changes, depending on which side of the world you are in, you can be in an area like Europe where you need to cut on your water consumption, but then you can be in Africa where you actually don't have enough water to meet your basic needs for safe water.
Now, for people without running water, many of them, as you mentioned, in Africa, the job of collecting water every day can be not only challenging, but also dangerous.
Absolutely. I founded Water Access Rwanda after realizing just how dangerous the water work could be for many people. In my case in Rwanda, it came through people fetching water from surface water sources like rivers and lakes. And often these lakes and rivers are infested with crocodiles. I opened up the news and read that these crocodiles were killing people who were going to fetch water. So that was a tragedy on many fronts. One, that people only had access to that dirty water where crocodile lives, but then that beyond the dangers of consuming unclean water, they were facing an extra danger of being killed by crocodiles when they go about that activity. But beyond that danger of meeting crocodiles or consuming unclean water, fetching water is an activity that completely steals time from women and children, mainly in rural Africa. Right now, the estimate is that African women on a collective basis, every single day lose 200 million hours collecting water. That's a lot of time that's being wasted by women. Imagine what it would mean if we give back that time to the women, more economic activity. I can imagine more time spent with their families, more freedom, more time to be creative and self-actualize, which now they're losing that time spent on a basic activity, but one they cannot stop because water is a basic need. Next to air, it's the one thing we cannot survive without as humans. So these mothers, these children are losing time day in and day out, collecting a basic need so their families can survive. And unfortunately, there's not yet the infrastructure to make sure that that water meets them in their home at the convenience of their homes. They have to go out to go get that water and often find it unclean and in dangerous conditions.
And you say it's disproportionately women and children who are tasked with finding water. Does that make clean water a children's rights issue, a women's rights issue as far as you're concerned?
Absolutely. I think when we're doing our SDG impact framework, it was a surprise to see that the only indicator we impact in terms of water being concerned was SDG number 6, and it's only one target. But when we come to SDG 5, which deals with gender, and quality education SDG 4, we're impacting more than 2 targets per SDG for those two. So once you enable access to clean and safe water in a convenient manner and affordably, you're impacting poverty, you're impacting children education, and you're impacting the time that women were spending on domestic tasks. And in the light of COVID, it's been touched upon a lot that women's burden from domestic work has increased a lot. And as we all know, washing hands is one of the main barriers to prevent against COVID-19. But when you're in an area where you can't access water, that just means more burden for women to go take care of their beloved ones and fetch a lot more water. So definitely water is a gender issue. Water is a children issue, because a child who grows up without water, without running water, and a child who grows up with running water will have absolutely different outcomes in life, with many factors contributing. But what we see in the rural areas we work in, kids wake up and the first activity they have to do before they even put on their school uniforms, before they think about their homeworks, is go fetch water. We see kids waking up as early as 4 a.m. just to beat everybody else to the water source so they can return at home in enough time and then go to school after they've had a shower and everything. So definitely that impacts education and future opportunity outcomes for children. So definitely access to water in a reliable way, in an affordable way, can be a children's rights issue and the women's rights issue.
Now, you founded Water Access Rwanda in 2014. What concretely does your work consist of? How do you bring clean running water to communities that might be remote, that may not have the infrastructure you'd assume to support running water?
Yes, what we realize at Water Access Rwanda is that the water crisis experienced right now in rural Africa, it's not a problem of availability of water in terms of a physical water resource. We have a lot of lakes, rivers, and huge underground water aquifers that we could tap into. What's missing is the infrastructure to deliver that water in a safe and affordable way and reliable way to the people in rural areas. So what you often find is governments invest heavily in large municipal grids. So if I'm servicing a city, it makes economic sense, I can do it, it's fine. But when you go to the rural areas, often what happens is there is the creation of public points. So water is only available through public points and often not reliable. So where we come in as Water Access Rwanda via our water mini grids is we go to the rural areas, and often there's been interventions before us that drilled boreholes and installed hand pumps in those boreholes. And what we do is we remove the hand pump and we install our Inuma state-of-the-art system that runs on renewable energy, whereby we pump the water from the same boreholes, filter it, and then distribute it into the community. And the community for the first time has a chance to connect to a piped network via our mini grid. So instead of servicing rural communities and planning to pipe water over 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers, with Water Access Rwanda, it can become an issue of just, do you have 100 households in one community needing water, and we can go to that community and create a whole new water source, a filtration facility, and a distribution network just for that community. So it changes completely the cost of infrastructure. It reduces it massively because you're no longer piping over long distances. It increases reliability and as a result also affordability of keeping that infrastructure running for governments. So this really changes the game because governments can plan better instead of trying to move people closer to the cities or forcing people to move to meet basic infrastructure. The infrastructure can meet people where they already are.
I'm so sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. We could talk about this for hours, I'm sure. Christelle Kwizera, founder and managing director of Water Access Rwanda, thank you for taking the time to speak to us on France 24 today.